Good evening. My final term paper will cover cultural diversity and inclusion for sustainability policies, specifically Natives and Indigenous communities and their role in policymaking when it comes to environmental sustainability approaches. The presentation will first begin off with identifying the core issue with Indigenous communities in terms of environmental issues. Then I will go into two case studies which touch on specific scenarios of Indigenous communities facing ethical challenges when it comes to their cultures and the environment and the governmental policies that go along with them. And then I will be tying into the different sustainable and ethical approaches that were found in both cases, such as collaborative governance, which I will get more into. So currently, there is a crisis all around the world where Indigenous nations and communities are facing pressure from the government in dishonoring their beliefs, cultures, and values through intrusion and degradation of sacred and ancestral grounds and loss of native biodiversity, which directly impacts their food supply, such as in this picture right here I have shown, is one of the United Nations of peoples who were protesting against fracking that they wanted to start on their ancestral lands, which also would impact their local water supplies. This is just one example of one of the issues currently facing the Indigenous tribes across the world. So the first case study I'm going to talk into is on Sea Country in Australia. Sea Country is a term used by the Indigenous Australians used to describe coastal and marine environments within a broader traditional estate associated with the sea or salt water. And among the many different Indigenous groups in Australia, common characteristics of their relationships to their sea country include traditional estates that incorporate coastal land, islands, and sea areas, sustainable use of coastal island and marine resources, and knowledge practices that conceptualize coastscape, seascape, animals, plants, and people as located within holistic kinship systems and ancestral domains. Each group initially had sovereign ownership and governance for millennia over their estates, including their sea countries. However, as soon as they were colonized, they lost some of that ownership, and it wasn't until 1998 where they established their first Indigenous Protected Areas, or IPAs, on the Aboriginal lands. IPAs is the same thing as MPAs, which is the Marine Protected Areas. And currently, there are several ways for the recognition of Indigenous people's sea country rights and interests in Australia, which includes statutory rights and interests, common law rights and interests, and government policies. Their legal rights in marine areas are less recognized than on land. So there's this constant battle for their marine rights. One of the common laws is the Common Law Native Title that was founded in 1992, which stated that Indigenous peoples' native title rights and interests are incorporated in the common law, which helps provide new opportunities for saltwater Indigenous people to gain recognition of their rights and interests in sea country. However, in that law, it states that the Indigenous groups must yield to other existing rights and interests, such as MPA designation or commercial shipping and fishing. So this is an example of a non-legislative collaborative governance. As I will show on the next slide, I have two pictures of one of the IPAs of the Demure Sea Country, which is owned by the Yongle people, who are the traditional owners of this IPA under the Northern Territory Land Rights Act of 1976. However, customary ownership of marine estates have not been legally recognized. So this is currently one of the main IPAs that the indigenous people have rights to. So this case study demonstrated a kind of collaborative governance built on trust and voluntary collaboration without constraints. Governance and management of a national park or marine park is led by indigenous traditional owners, the indigenous people, who invite government agencies to participate. So it's opposite in where instead of the government agency inviting the natives, it is the natives themselves, because it is their land, it is their right. They are the ones who invite the governments to help participate in the marine protected areas. And this is just one form of collaborative governance. The second case study I'm going to talk about that kind of touches into collaborative governance and the 3 E's of the sustainability approach would be indigenous community engagement and the extractive industry. So this study was a qualitative study which conducted 33 semi-directed interviews with different experts who were part of the mining, energy, or forestry industry, who helped manage relationships with the indigenous communities where the operations was being done. The study found that 76% of the manager of the relationship stated that based off of their interactions with the natives, the culture and traditions are inseparable from the environment. So this is crucial because it further emphasizes how valuable the environment is to the indigenous people as a tradition, as a culture and belief. So it is becoming more crucial to involve stakeholders in the corporate social responsibility to identify and implement sustainability initiatives and enhance the legitimacy of organizations or social acceptability of controversial projects, which includes the 5 P's of the people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership outlined in the UN 2030 Agenda. So this right here was a study that pretty much showed how vital it was for corporations to have more interactions, more involvement with the natives, because it is the land that they will be working on. So they have to have permission, they have to get license from the natives. So it's a collaborative governance where the natives and the corporations together come up and they have to come to an agreement in order for anything to be done. And then the ILK approach, or the Indigenous and Local Knowledge approach, which was founded in 2017, is building off of collaborative governance, where there is was adopted by the Intergovernmental Platform of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, which states that Indigenous peoples and local communities have the right to be meaningfully engaged in decision-making processes that impact their livelihoods, cultures, and societies. In this way, the people have the opportunity to promote recognition of the value of their knowledge and with scientific knowledge as a key feature towards a more sustainable ecosystem governance. So in conclusion, the key issues I found was international recognition for Indigenous people and power dynamics between scientific knowledge and cultural knowledge. What I found was that there's a lot of collaborative governance going on and a lot of 3 E's approach being present, but there's still a struggle, language barrier, so there needs to be more involvement. So possible solutions could be to extend invitations to these indigenous tribes to come meet the UN global leaders in person whenever they're deciding the next agendas for the environmental agendas. And also to try to conduct yearly in-person visits to these communities in the marine protected areas and the indigenous protected areas as well. And this is my works cited stage. And thank you very much.